on this. I will have a quick 15-minute presentation, and then you can ask me whatever questions you want to ask to this topic. Before I start, I think it's appropriate that we applaud the efforts put in globally by all the health workers and people who run our essential services. They are the true heroes in this crisis. We have an unprecedented global crisis, and all these workers have really been at the forefront of the health services. So let me applaud all the efforts put in across the world by all these people, health workers, essential services workers, and people who are keeping the hospitals and cities going. With that, let me get into what I'm going to say to you in the next 20 minutes. The title of this presentation, A Brave New World, was inspired by a novel. And you see in the next slide the picture of the novel. This novel was published in 1932. It was written by Aldous Huxley, and it was a dystopian novel where he spoke about scientific changes leading to a dystopian society, and which is challenged by a single individual, the protagonist of the story. This novel became very popular, and in fact, the Modern Library, which is a very, very respected library, has ranked this novel at number 5 on the list of the 100 best English-speaking novels of the 20th century. Although this novel was dystopian, my talk is not. I have just taken the title from this talk and I've called it A Brave New World for Startups. Indeed, it is a brave new world, and you'll see from what I'm going to present what are the 3 possible scenarios in the present crisis. In the next slide, you'll see COVID-19 has, to my mind, 3 emerging scenarios. Various people have given with possibilities. I've tried and put it in a nutshell. Scenario 1 is there is a vaccine in 12 months. Scenario 2 is within 2 years, human beings as a race have natural immunity. And scenario 3 is there's no clear endpoint. If there's no clear endpoint, it is really a new normal for all of us. Something which we have not been used to. It is something unprecedented. It is something no one could have predicted. And what do you do in this situation? The single most quality, as you'll see in what I'm presenting next, is resilience. My next slide will show you that resilience is the next biggest quality which we'll now look at founders. Till this point, founders had to have qualities, various qualities, which included a growth mindset. He or she had to be agile, driven, have the spirit and ability to conquer the world. Various such qualities were required from a founder. But as we now are, I think the biggest quality which will be required is resilience. It clearly means just 2 things in a nutshell. How to survive and thrive through unfavorable events, and how to prepare for a changed world. What is happening today hopefully does not happen again, but the same situation we pray will not happen again. But we have to be ready as founders to be prepared for a changed world and truly have a resilience as part of our main character. And if there is one thing which I would like you to carry after I have spoken, it is in the next slide. Just remember this formula which I'm going to show you soon in the next slide, which is the magic of what I call the 3 C's. These 3 C's are very, very important in the present context. First is conserve cash. Second is curtail expenses, and third is collect receivables. You have to conserve cash, keep it as close to a chest as possible. Whatever you have now has to ensure it helps you survive through this period. I have separate slides on how to curtail expenses and receivables. Whatever money you have to receive from other people, you have to chase it vigorously to ensure that you really get as much money left from the receivables as possible. So these 3 C's is a formula which I think you should think of as soon as you wake up in the morning. This will guide your business. And what is the brave new world, what I'm talking about? If you see in the next slide what I'm talking about, brave new world, there are certain things which are changing in this brave new world. Firstly, business world has changed forever. The world has changed, a lot of things have changed, and the business world has really changed forever. Work from home has now become mainstream. A lot of us have been forced to work from home. We have embraced it now without a choice, and it has now been accepted globally as something which is now mainstream. It has its own challenges and advantages, and I'll allude to them later on. And with all this, there are lifestyle changes in the way you think, in the way you consume, in the way you live your life. So on a broad scale, business world has changed, work from home has become mainstream, and there are habits and lifestyle changes which will have a deeper implication and outcome. So what does work from home imply, and what are the implications it will have on startups and others? So if you see in my next slide, I've articulated briefly some of the changes which I think will have a significant impact in the work from home method which we are going to follow. The world has changed forever. So with that, we now have focus on employee health. Each company, each organization, each startup will look at employee health as the number one priority. And digital. If there's any point in the business history of organizations, or particularly the small and medium-sized organizations, of one needing to embrace digital, it is now. New models of communication and collaboration have now emerged. The old model of having to meet personally and discuss personally are really changing rapidly. Online is something which will be part of everything. Doing business, getting business, fulfillment, all of it. And cost management will now come to the forefront. Cost management was something which was always important, but now it will really move to the forefront. So these are some of the immediate changes. And work from home is one big change. So in my next slide, I have articulated a little bit of what this will imply, what will work from home really, what implications does it have. So work from home now, if you see in the next slide, which I'm going to present, is now become mainstream. It was something which was always, people thought it will happen, it should happen, something desirable, but it is really now mainstream. What does that mean? It really means that decision making is now dispersed, decentralized. So a large company will have multiple people, and today they are forced to have people working from various places. And the result is decision making gets truly decentralized. NASSCOM has recently said that 90% of their 4.3 million people, they want to have a model of work from home. That's a significant number for the IT industry. And Fortunately, it is an industry where work from home is possible. Will it lead to smaller office spaces in future? Will we see the end of huge, large head offices? Will we see only small conference rooms where people meet, let's say, once in 15 days and balance time they work from home? Is this the beginning of the obituary for head office? The head office is dead. Long live the head office. Well, time will tell, but certainly it is the beginning of a decentralized and distributed decision making. Certainly it is the beginning of acceptance of remote working, and certainly it is the beginning of it becoming mainstream and people accepting that you're not going to meet your colleague every day and have coffee with him or her every day. So it is the beginning of rapid changes, and work from home is one such big change which happens. And what about lifestyle changes? All this will lead to obviously some lifestyle changes, and my next slide will show you the lifestyle changes. We will see more of the gig economy, people wanting to work at their time and pace, people wanting to work at their location from their place of convenience. And this is something which will really, to my mind, take off significantly. Companies also won't mind hiring gig workers because then their costs become variable. And consumption patterns will change as more and more people spend more time at home or away from office. They will consume things differently. They will have greater demand for different products and services. Travel will be the first to be hit. Less travel. I think those days of people and executives, going around cities and countries just to meet and have meetings is going to be a thing of past. People will certainly less travel. It will be really frowned upon that you keep traveling a lot. And personal health and hygiene, on a personal basis, the which people will give to personal health and hygiene will. So these are some of the changes which are going to take in the lifestyle. And moving on, talking about a little bit more about health and hygiene. Health is wealth is what my father used to always tell me, and now it should always have been in the top of everyone's priority. But today the world has realized that health is the number one priority. In terms of a company, whether it's the HR head or any other person, that person will, in addition to what she or he is doing, ensure that employee health gets the primacy which is required. Health records of employees will be critical, so management of the entire record system will be important. There will obviously be temperature checks, there will be social distancing. So probably whatever small office is kept, the configurations will also change. And what will also happen is mental well-being will become more important. As more people spend time at home and less in office in social groups, it will be important for the company to look at the mental well-being of their employees. On a personal space, I think regular exercise, yoga, fitness, well-being, all of this will really, really become more and more important. People will realize that this was something which should have always been important, but again, it will get primary importance. And let me talk about being digital. In the next slide, I'll talk about what is going to happen in the digital space. digitize or die. This slogan should have been accepted by all organizations many years back, but some have been reluctant and somehow have been very slow. In India particularly, I think the organizations which will really embrace digital and make it at the center of the business is the 65 million micro, small and medium enterprises. These are really the majority enterprises in India. Some of them, or most of them rather, are family owned, and they have not embraced digital to the extent that they should. They are now forced to accept digital, whether it's in terms of acquisition, fulfillment, billing, payment, customer interaction. The entire life cycle of the business will become digital. They don't have much time now to embrace this. They will have to do it in a hurry. And this will lead to huge demand for everything connected to digital, whether it's hardware, software, apps, services, payment apps. All of these things will get a huge boost as all the 65 million enterprises start getting digital. And what about go-to-market strategies? As I'm showing in the next slide, go-to-market strategies will change substantially. Online channels will have to be at the core of all marketing strategies, not just something which is good to have or nice to have, but at the center. If you have a business model which is already online, you'll have to really make it robust. And there is one more business model which I feel in India, we're just waiting for it to explode. There are a lot of companies experimenting with it, and this is the subscription model. If you want one inspirational subscription, you should check out what Dollar Shave Club did in the US and other countries. It was launched in April 2011 with a very simple idea of sending razors to people's home at a low price every month. You don't need to every month decide what you want to do. It comes in your mailbox and you use it. I think today time has come where people sitting at home, spending so much time at home, will love subscription models for all your products. And it is not as if you have an existing channel or existing product, you can slap subscription model on top of it. It doesn't work that way. You have to rethink from ground zero. Subscription model requires a different mindset, a different thought process. And people now, so many people sitting at home would love subscription models, simple decision making, the guarantee of the product or service being delivered. India is just waiting for some product to become successful like Dollar Shaving Club. And it is now important to own your customer journey. Customer journey is critical. While you may use the other channels, online channels, in the long term, the more customers you own and ensure the entire journey till fulfillment and satisfaction and repeated buying or selling, you need to own it. And if your model is offline, if it's a distribution model, if it's a physical model, you have really no choice. You need to pivot very, very quickly as a founder and pivot to an online model because that's the future. You may have a hybrid model or you may have a majority online model, but having a pure offline model is very, very difficult in this times to come. And let me talk a little bit about communication and collaboration. In the next slide, I'm going to speak about communication and collaboration. Online tools of communication and collaboration will become all the more important. As more and more people use communication online, whether it's privacy, security issues, features, everything will be very, very critical. And, there will obviously be a few winners in the space. Some softwares have already become very popular, but we will see an increasing number of software and apps which will make communication and, in fact, collaboration between people sitting remotely. I think more than communication, collaboration online is going to be important. And with that will be a proper mechanism for feedback and project management. This is something which online has not been used too much. The tools will follow whereby you can use it very effectively. And physical meetings will not happen for some time to come, and even after that, my guess is we will have very few physical meetings. People will travel less. There will be a change to working, and people will really prefer online meetings. And moving on to cost cutting, in my next slide, cost cutting is something which is now becoming again at the center point of all organizations. All aspects of business as a founder, now we have to relook. We have to start from ground zero, look at each and every cost. I have just covered some of them. People cost, if you look at, whether it's restructuring of salaries, if your teams need to be right-sized, you need to look at sharp performance-oriented compensation models. Typically, only sales people had very sharp models of this kind. I think the time has come now. Can your organization have 100% performance orientation salary, whether it's a back end, front end? If not, okay, 90%. I think performance orientation for even people who do not have numbers is something which you need to see strongly. All expenses have to be rationalized. Don't be ashamed of renegotiating contracts. This is unprecedented. You need to renegotiate contracts. But in all this ruthless cost cutting which you have to do to stay afloat, don't do two things. Number one, don't default on statutory payments. It will come back to bite you at some other point. Statutory payments don't go away. Whether it is GST, withholding tax, TDS, your normal income tax, any taxes, dues, don't default. And don't cut out core product development. If you have a product and it's the most important thing for your business, the last thing you should do is cut out the core development, product development. And what is a new mantra? In the next slide, you'll see frugality is a new mantra. Frugality is a new reality. This is something you have to keep in your mind. Cash is back as the king. Previously we had thought of rapid sales growth and cash will follow. But today you have to just think of cash as the king. In the good old days, in our books of accounts, which are written either Gujarati, Marwadi, or local languages, I always followed cash was always treated as the most important thing. At the end of the day, the owner looked at the cash received and cash paid out, and that for him or her was the profit. So cash is now back as the king, and more importantly, you have to have a trim and slim organization. All the flap will necessarily have to grow. And what about consumption? Let me speak about consumption in the next slide. So with at-home consumption, there will be huge demand for any founder of a company which can satisfy all these consumers sitting at home. It could be food, as I said, subscription models of various products, entertainment, games, health. Consumers will want at-home delivery in a smooth manner, quick, immediate, and on something which they can rely on. And of course, demand for data will increase. What will happen to travel? In my next slide, I'll talk about travel a little bit. incessant travel will be frowned upon. Online meetings will get priority. If you're not doing online meetings, you may not get priority. And people who should really live in a suitcase, I think that time is over now. You will really need to forget living in a suitcase. You will have to look at the online models. So with that, let me talk 2-3 slides on what are the opportunities which are unlocking in front of your eyes after the dust settles down. So in the next slide, I'll talk about few opportunities and then carry on for next 2 slides on when the dust settles down, what is it that you're going to see? You're going to see a captive audience staying at home, sitting at home, consuming products at home. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You will never so much of your consumers, so many numbers of and so many consumers sitting at home, which will really help you to target your marketing efforts. All these consumers are spending a lot of time at home, and it will be probably easier for you to target them. You will have to fine-tune your products, fine-tune your delivery models, but all of this taken together you need to fine-tune strategies to target these consumers. They're sitting at home. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There's a shift in demand. Demand will be for consuming at home. So you will need to alter your strategy and rethink your go-to-market strategy. Go-to-market will have to factor in online, will have to factor in at-home consumption. We'll all have to also factor in the fact that going to office will not be a regular phenomenon. So these are some of the opportunities. Let me move on with some more opportunities which I see in the next slide. On the digital side, there's a massive opportunity with micro, small, and medium enterprises. There are 65 million of them, and a lot of them, majority of them, have gone on the digital model. They will be forced to do it. There's no choice. And all aspects connected to getting them on the digital model, whether it's the payment services, delivery, logistics, customer handling, customer calls, record keeping, anything which is digital and which will help these enterprises. You're in business. You really need to look at it carefully. And let me talk of one last opportunity which is unfolding. I just cannot but talk about it on education. That's my next slide. Probably the biggest change will happen in education. Their online learning will now become the norm, will become mainstream. People had thought that, students and teachers, trainers and learners will not accept online models. It is now accepted. It is forced on people and it is getting accepted. Upskilling, reskilling will become exceedingly important, across all online courses. And as they say, geography will become history because it will become a borderless learning. The moment you go online, you break away from the classroom, it becomes a borderless learning. So sitting in Mumbai, where I am, I can learn from the best trainers, the best people coaching, or the best educators from across the world. There's nothing to stop me now doing that. So education industry overall is going to see a massive change. Let me wind up with a little bit of creative thinking, and then I've already received a lot of questions. I'll respond to some of them. Let me wind up and ask 1 or 2 slides with some creativity. The last generation of baby boomers were born post World War II. With so much percentage of population sitting at home and working from home all the time, are we going to see another generation which will then lead to a huge and massive demand for food, housing, and other products? I don't know. Only time will tell. No one had predicted the baby boomers after World War II, but they happened, and it did lead after a lag for massive demand in a lot of products which that generation wanted. I don't know if this will happen. And if this happens, if you see in the next slide, it's a little bit use of creativity I've done, play on words. Will this generation, if it happens, be called quarantines? Or will we get inspiration from the famous album by Hariharan and Leslie Lewis in the late 90s? It was called Colonial Cousins. Will we call them Coronial Cousins? That's just a bit of creativity at the end of my presentation. You'll see my email ID and my Twitter handle in the next slide. Please feel free to connect with me after the presentation as well. But let me quickly summarize. As I started, I mentioned about the fact that we should really praise all the health essential service workers. Resilience is important for the founders. 3 C's I mentioned. I mentioned about how business world has changed forever. I mentioned about work from home, health and hygiene being important, digitize and die for everyone. If you don't digitize, you die. Go-to-market changes in strategy for people who are not online. Importance for communication and collaboration. Frugality is the new reality. And then I spoke about a couple of opportunities connected to such a large number of people sitting at home. Never waste a good crisis. This quote is by Winston Churchill. Other people have used it differently, but never waste a good crisis was what Sir Winston Churchill mentioned. Let me end my presentation with this last quote, and I will take some questions. If you have any questions, put it on the chat. I will respond to some of them. I have a lot of questions. The people whom I cannot respond to, I will separately reach out to them and talk to them. And if you have any question afterwards, you can always write to me at ninad@100x.vc. Let me end finally by saying, let us all come together. Let us all work together. Let us all fight this epidemic together. Stay safe. Stay healthy. I'm over to questions. I'll repeat the questions and then respond to them. Thank you again for joining. One question has come, a couple of people have asked, is what happens if I was planning a fundraise in the near future or in the middle of a fundraise or imminent fundraise? Well, if you already started the process, you need to go ahead with it. But if you haven't, the flavor of the month now, or the flavor of the season now is people are looking for all-weather products and services which are not connected to any particular time or moment in history. So if you have all-weather products, if you have products which cater to the new reality, whether it's home consumption, online, any of this health-connected, education-connected, you shouldn't stop. Certainly, you shouldn't stop. And if you don't have products connected to those industries, probably you should pivot the model a little bit and then come back to it. One question is, what is my view on co-working spaces? I think it's only time will tell, but I feel the days of large offices are over. Not have large office setups. So in fact, it could lead to a demand for co-working because you pay as you go. You hire some conference rooms as you go. But to my mind, large offices will find it. One question is on founder saying I am a recent recently entered the tech industry in the STEM space. There's a lot of competition. What do I do? I think if you have a unique product, this is the right time to get into the tech space. There are some questions on transport and logistics. I think one of the industries which will really see a good future is on agri-tech and movement of goods and commodities, particularly essential goods, groceries, all of these things which people need at home. So anything connected to that industry will do well. Manish is asking me about travel industry and related industry. Won't it do good at all? Unfortunately, in the short term, there's not so good news, Manish. Medium term, people might start traveling, but with a lot of restrictions. I think in the long term, it is still the scenario is not looking as good as it was earlier, as people will be very careful in traveling in future as well. Having said that, I think the industry will have to evolve new norms of health and hygiene in the industry. Once they are embraced, I think the industry will probably do well. Sorry about that break. There were some glitches. There is a question on Rajkumar has asked about online shopping platform. How do I grow with franchise model? Will we get funds? I think if you can prove that your business is scalable on a franchise model, offline, online, whatever, and it's always a business, it should not be a problem at all. You will really need to rethink a little bit, reinvent yourself, and it will work out. Sarang has asked a question on manufacturing scenario. What will evolve? So, yeah, I think manufacturing is probably the most difficult working. One has to be physically there. I think as soon as lockdown is partially open or fully open, it will revive. But till that point of time, it will be a little difficult. So Manjunath has asked, do you think demand for hyperlocal content will go up owing to virtualization? My short answer is yes. Anything which is hyperlocal will certainly grow up. Vipul is asking what will be the effect of COVID-19 on real estate and transportation. I think real estate industry will take some time to recover as it adjusts to the new reality. I had mentioned about how preferences might change for office and home spaces. Transportation will come back again, particularly as more and more demand grows for ensuring reliable supply chains in essentials. I have interesting creative questions saying there are two types of people gung-ho and people have given up. Is it the same with investors? I can tell you investors are still gung-ho. They think, there is going to be opportunity for someone who comes out of this crisis. Each crisis, if you see in the past, this is obviously an unprecedented crisis, but whether it's the earlier crisis which happened, there have been winners. There have been huge winners. This is a question of what will be the effect on multiplex industry. It will take time for people to go back. It will take a bit of time, and even after that happens, it will there will be certain parameters they'll have to follow. Milind is asking, online voting, will it become a trend? The answer is yes. What is thoughts on live training and skill development? Yeah, if it can be done online, will do well. Is it the right time to connect with investors? Pranit is asking me. It is always the right time. Never lose touch with investors. Selling on marketplace or e-commerce, I fundamentally believe that owning your customer is important, but it depends on which industry you are in. Smith is asking, I have a local garment shop. How do you do this business online? You can. You have to just assume you did not have a physical shop. What if it did not, and you were in the garment business? Supplying garments to hyper localities. And if once you keep that thing on, that hat on, you can reinvent yourself. I'm going to take last one or two questions. Satyabrata, thank you. He's completed my presentation, but he's asking about IoT, wireless and hardware, electronics, product development, design. All of these things will have positive impact in this current crisis. With that, I am coming to my end of my presentation. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I was happy to share my thoughts. Please send the feedback. These are my thoughts. Only time will tell if what I've said will come true or not. But yes, we have to fight this present crisis. We have to sail through this. We have to go through this, and then look at what lies ahead and go ahead for that. So thank you again, all of you, for joining. And please be in touch. Be safe. Be healthy. Thank you.